We're live with another podcast. I'm Mike.
I am Mitch.
Just get started and talking about free agency. Started, yesterday?
Yeah, July 1st, yesterday, free agency began for the National Hockey League, and it seems like pretty much everyone, all the biggest names at least, went off the board.
Yeah.
But top of that list, John Tavares
going the biggest one.
Going to the Toronto Maple Leafs, one that I definitely would not have predicted.
One that was holding up every other kind of move going on in the NHL.
Yeah, it's
signing wise and everything. Everything seemed to be everything wait until what Tavares does.
That's what's been rumored for a while, that as soon as Tavares makes his decision, and it was thought that he would have made it a couple days ago, maybe. But as soon as that happened, things did start to open up. We saw Ryan O'Reilly traded to the St. Louis Blues, so things definitely did open up after Tavares decided to go with the Maple Leafs. And I'm pretty surprised that he didn't stay with the Islanders. And it's not necessarily that I thought that would have been the right decision, because I really don't. I mean, the Maple Leafs are definitely a better team than the Islanders, obviously, with how well they did last year, along with the fact that maybe they wouldn't be able to offer as much money to Tavares
probably
as the Islanders, but the amount of endorsements and everything you can get in Canada, especially as a Toronto Maple Leaf, it makes that the dollar figure go way up. So I think he made the right decision. Yeah,
or just him thinking it going forward out of the teams that are interested in him, which team gives him the best chance at contending, and I guess to him that ended up being the Leafs.
Yeah, I think
because even if he would have stayed with the Islanders, they're better with Tavares, but there wasn't really.
Yeah, and you also have to think about the fact that like with each of these other teams, like the other teams that were contending for him, like the San Jose Sharks, Dallas Stars, whatever, adding Tavares would obviously step you up as a potential contender. But for the Islanders, they had him last year. They still couldn't make the playoffs with him. So I still think they would have struggled to even make the playoffs this year with Tavares. Obviously,
and all the moves they've made this offseason so far.
Yeah, since the Tavares signing with the Maple Leafs, the Islanders have made some questionable signings. Starting with Leo Komarov, they signed to a 4-year deal worth $3 million per. Komarov was with Lou Lamoriello on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Lou Lamoriello now the general manager of the New York Islanders, and Komarov $3 million a year for 4 years for a fourth liner. A fourth liner.
I know.
So, and he was someone who, on the Maple Leafs, definitely got more playing time than he should have. I think we all should have probably realized that Lou Lamoriello was obviously enamored with him, as the Maple Leafs organization seemed to be. And then the worst one of all, one that us as
that's questionable.
The one that us as Flyers fans are more familiar with is Valtteri Filppula signing a 1-year, $2.75 million contract with not Toronto Maple Leafs, with the New York Islanders,
and having a no move clause. I guess that's why he went there, because there were rumors that he might go back to Detroit or whatever. Yeah, but I'm guessing with the Islanders, that must have given him the most.
It really surprises me that he was not only able to sign a deal on July 1st. I thought he would have had to have waited for a while, maybe in train camp to someone to get a deal. But not only that, but to get a decent-sized 1-year deal along with a no-move clause. Obviously, there are multiple teams, including the Red Wings, as you said, bidding for him. But I don't know what they saw.
I don't know.
With the Flyers last season lost many, not just a step. He was
many steps.
Unbelievably slow. No acceleration. I mean, he's always been a smart player, and a great passer. So that didn't necessarily go away.
Yeah, but he was pretty good on faceoffs and everything. But
he's not a completely useless player, but with his level of speed,
my guess is with Tavares gone, they wanted a veteran guy with some leadership. And I guess Filppula would bring that to them.
I think that's probably
because he split the assistant captaincy with McDonald. So
I wouldn't be surprised if he was a part of the leadership group with the Islanders going forward. But that's a team who, and these moves they made today, don't really have much of an impact, and no move they really could have made would have had as much of an impact as obviously losing Tavares has had. But they are they're going to be a bottom dweller for a while yet again.
They might be battling with Ottawa for that last spot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's rough.
If they can get something out of Carlson, then maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah,
but that one's still the one thing that really hasn't happened yet is the trade for Carlson, because that's probably the next biggest thing that could happen.
That's the
Carlson.
Biggest potential move for the rest of the offseason, definitely. Bob McKenzie was reporting yesterday that there had been a little bit more talk. It seems to have been, as Travis Yost reported, mainly the Ottawa Senators talking with the Tampa Bay Lightning and Vegas Golden Knights obviously are the favorite to land Erik Karlsson.
But I still feel with the signing of McDonough yesterday with the Lightning that may have
they're a team
that may have been a little bit out of the sweepstakes for Karlsson.
Yeah, for the Lightning, they do not have very much cap space. No. Their cap situation. A lot of people have said that maybe they could move a guy like Tyler Johnson, who I believe is on a $5 million a year deal, to clear out some cap space. But pending, unless there's a move like that coming, I don't really see how they could really be a fit.
Yeah.
For Erik Karlsson. So I really think if he gets moved, I think he's going to Vegas.
Yeah.
And it would just be so strange to see a team that made it to the Stanley Cup this past season. Not that I think they're that level of a team yet. I think they really just struck lightning in a bottle this past season.
Yeah, they really did. Because everyone pretty much had like a career year.
But adding Erik Karlsson, arguably the best defenseman in the world, to that team, they're definitely a Stanley Cup contender.
And Stastny helps them too, because they signed Stastny yesterday for 3 years.
They signed Paul Stastny to a 3-year deal. 3 years, $6 million per.
That gives them a little more depth.
It definitely gives them.
Because before it was always like they had the top really good first line, but then everything afterwards kind of fell off.
Yeah, well,
you had Neil, but that was really kind of it.
Yeah, that first line, that Karlsson, Marchessault, Riley Smith line was the.
And they lost Riley Smith too.
Did they lose Riley Smith?
I think. No, sorry, I was thinking of someone else. Sorry.
Yeah, but that really does give them a lot of depth. I think that was a very good signing. I honestly thought that a guy like Paul Stastny could potentially get a longer term deal. I'm very surprised.
Oh no, I was thinking of Neil. They lost Neil.
Yeah, James Neal signed with the Calgary Flames earlier today. So Vegas did lose a bit there, but I think they gained more in a guy like Paul Stastny to help them shore up their center depth.
Yeah.
In Vegas. So again, next year they're a contender even without Karlsson. I think they're a team.
And it helps that the Pacific isn't the strongest of divisions.
Yeah, I think really even when you take into account how well each player did over their career. I still think that Vegas probably is the favorite to win the Pacific Division next season.
They probably are, but at the same time, with everyone playing so well the last year, it wouldn't surprise me if they fell off.
Either. Yeah, they could fall off a cliff there, but to me, I don't think that. I think that they very well could, in terms of points, have like 10, 15 less points than they did last season,
probably,
which is a big chunk. But with how poor their division is, I still think that they
True. The only thing that'd be different is playoff-wise, I don't think you're going to have the same flurries you did in this past playoffs.
Yeah.
He was playing out of his mind until pretty much the Stanley Cup, but even then, there's only so much you can do.
That's really what that team needs to prove, is that they can perform as well as they did without Marc-Andre Fleury standing on his head for such a long length of time. I don't think we can really expect that out of Fleury for next season.
No.
Other news, probably the biggest trade definitely was the Ryan O'Reilly deal. Ryan O'Reilly going to the Buffalo Sabres. Going from the Buffalo Sabres to the St. Louis Blues. And for the Blues,
I feel like that for all what they gave up just for Ryan O'Reilly, they should have. I thought they would want something else besides just him.
Because Ryan O'Reilly,
because they got rid of a second round pick for him and everything.
Yeah.
Even though the rumors were that Buffalo wanted like a big
They wanted the rumors were that the Sabres wanted a first, a second, and a very good prospect or a young roster player. It's been long rumored that the Blues were a team who was the front runner to trade for him.
Right.
So it's not a big surprise that they were the team to land him. There was talk that really the deal had to be done by midnight last night, just because a $7.5 million roster bonus was due to Ryan O'Reilly at midnight. So the Sabres had said that if they were going to pay that, if they were going to keep him through midnight, they were going to keep him for next season. So a deal needed to happen last night, and it did. And the full deal being a first-round pick, a second, Vladimir Sobotka, Patrick Berglund, and Tage Thompson. And as if you compare it to the ask that they had, obviously there are more pieces, but a guy, Tage Thompson, is the biggest prospect that they're gaining in return. Right. And Thompson is not among the very top prospects on the Blues. They have a couple guys like Jordan Kyrou and a couple other guys who are above Tage Thompson, Robert Thomas among them. So obviously the Blues and Sabres negotiated to maybe get a little bit more in terms of return instead of the more impact prospect. They got more players in return. Sobotka and Berglund, both centermen. So
they obviously wanted to get more forward help because all their players they got were forwards. So
yeah, each piece is a forward, and they did get those two picks. So for the Sabres, I honestly thought they were going to get more. I mean, when you look at
when I was hearing what they wanted, I thought they were going to end up getting more.
When you look at each piece individually, Sobotka and Berglund, they're bottom six guys, bottom six centers. Tage Thompson's a good. He's a former first round pick. He's a good prospect, but he's not a great prospect. So honestly, if I were a Sabres fan, I'd be a little bit disappointed with the return.
A little bit, but then at the same time, depending on how well the Blues do this year, where the first round pick goes.
It's a trade that the Sabres are obviously, even with getting Rasmus Dahlin and having Jack Eichel, they're still a team who is rebuilding, and they're still a few years away. So obviously they believe Tage Thompson can be something in the future, a top six guy. And, just adding more picks is always something that you need to do when you're in a rebuild.
Excel's been doing that for a while now. And trades always getting a pick or
and
prospect.
The Blues, again, I mean, they traded 2017 first-round pick to the Flyers, along with the 2018 this past draft first-round pick for Braden Shen, and now trading another first for Ryan O'Reilly. So
I guess, for them, it makes more sense to have Ryan O'Reilly as a first-line center than Braden Shen as a first-line center.
Yeah, I have been. It's strange. I've been seeing a lot of people putting Shen above Ryan O'Reilly, and I definitely
I don't know how that works.
I definitely not agree with that one. Ryan O'Reilly's a guy who you want him to be your second line guy if you're a contender, but he's a guy who could
be a first line center, but with the Blues you don't have the best centers.
Yeah, so with the Blues, I think he definitely.
Shen, from the most part of his career with the Flyers, was playing on the wing. He was never really on center. He lined up a center a couple of times, but it was mostly on the wing.
Yeah, Shen obviously this year had some success at center. Obviously some of that is to Vladimir Tarasenko's credit. But he's had some success, so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the two of them had similar ice time, but because they saw Shen playing so well with Tarasenko, the two of them having some chemistry, that they keep them together. So maybe that's what they see in terms of that. And probably the next biggest signing, the next biggest name player, James Van Riemsdyk.
Coming to Philadelphia.
Coming back to the Flyers in a deal that honestly I had no idea that the Flyers were in any way interested in James Van Riemsdyk.
Me either.
It was something that just came out of the blue. There were rumors with Van Riemsdyk that maybe there were rumors that the Coyotes were very interested. Maybe he wanted to go there. A lot of people thought he was going to go to maybe the Devils, go back home to New Jersey. But he's a Philadelphia Flyer once again. 5
years, $35 million.
$35 million. If I'm looking at it in terms of just money value and the value he'll bring to the team, it's not too long-term of a deal.
No.
Where he will be playing in his final season.
It's kind of like, to me, it's hopefully more productive, but as like a Simmons, because they're the same age, and I don't know if Simmons would get a similar contract, but 5 years for that much.
Van Riemsdyk is about a year younger. Van Riemsdyk is someone whose game will probably age a bit better than Simmons, along with just producing more in the past. So Van Riemsdyk is someone who plays a similar game than Simmons in that he's a net front guy. They're both guys who get a lot of their production on the power play as that net front presence. That's brought up questions of whether Simmons is now available from the Flyers. Ron Hextall, in his press conference after announcing the signing of James Van Riemsdyk, he said that he's still interested in signing Wayne Simmons.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just me, but he didn't sound as adamant about keeping Simmons, and obviously you can never trust what a general manager says.
I would be okay either way if you can get Simmons for like a decent contract or whatever. A couple years, not too much, then I wouldn't mind, because he would be a good player to have, especially if you're trying to contend now, which it seems he kind of wants to do now, is to contend sooner rather than later. But at the same time, you have to make sure it's the right deal for the Flyers and not do anything.
As Ron Hextall has said, going into this free agency period, he didn't want to give out those 6-7 year deals. Obviously, he gave out a 5-year deal to Van Riemsdyk, but that only takes him until his 33. His final year of his deal, he will be 33 for that entire season. So yes, he'll probably be declining at that point, but not at the rapid rate that a longer contract would give you. And I think this does give you a bit of a look into how long Hextall would be looking to sign Simmons for.
Right.
I think he'd probably be looking at more of a 3-4 year contract, 5 years maximum. And I don't know how well Simmons would take that. I have no idea, obviously, what his thinking is.
If he would want to stay a Flyer, or if he would want more money, and I don't know.
Yeah, he seems like the type of guy who... obviously, he's someone who's talked about as a great locker room guy. He seems like someone who could be very loyal.
He's a guy that everyone seems to always love. So.
Yeah, so I mean, him taking a hometown discount wouldn't be shocking.
No.
But I wouldn't be surprised either if Ron Hextall looked at Wayne Simmons and thought, this is a guy who obviously last year was a bit of an anomaly in that he was injured the entire season. So you expect his numbers to go up some.
But even before like his press conference, when the signing first happened with JVR, like the immediate thing was, don't be surprised if like Simmons was traded or something like that.
That seemed to be the national reaction to the signing of James Van Riemsdyk because of that power play. Van Riemsdyk's someone who should be on your first power play, and Wayne Simmons couldn't even stay on the first power play with the Flyers last season with Nolan Patrick taking over his spot.
And the difference between JVR and then Simmons is JVR would be able to do more than just stand in the front. He's more of a Patrick, and he'll be able to set up plays more.
Yeah, Simmons is. I mean, they're both guys who are great in front of the net, but I think James Van Riemsdyk is someone who.
That's why I think Patrick overtook him on the first power play line, because he was able to make more plays.
He was more dynamic in that role. He had more to bring to that role than to just park in front of the net and deflect shots, which is also, I mean, that's not to say
like even in that game against the Islanders where Patrick had 2 goals or something like that.
Yeah, 2 goals in the power play, and not to say that Wayne Simmons is invaluable in his role in front of the net, but
that's where most of his production is in front of the net.
But this is now 2 players who can replicate his
game
in front of the net, the vast majority of his production. So it does
make you think, what if he would have actually had the surgery to fix his hip during the training camp last season and not play the whole year hurt?
Yeah, so there are a lot of questions there whether or not Simmons goes. Honestly, I don't know about you, but I think that Simmons should be traded.
Right.
I think that honestly, especially with this signing,
I think if you want a player that you can trade and get a decent amount back for, sure, trade Simmons.
Yeah, and I think that the return you will get for him probably greatly exceeds the value he will bring you on the ice just because of that reputation he has. He's the type of guy who a lot of people overvalue just in the sense of the on-ice, the leadership, all that sort of thing, the grit, the whatever, that a lot of the older hockey guys seem to value highly. And obviously those things are important to have on your team, but I think that they could get more value from him than they would get him on the ice.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of Van Riemsdyk, obviously he does, even though I don't think either of us really expected the signing.
I didn't expect it at all. But then it was like reports that Giroux and Voracek were saying he should come back to Philadelphia.
Yeah,
so.
they were definitely recruiting him, but supposedly all week Claude Giroux was calling Van Riemsdyk, trying to get him to sign here. But Van Riemsdyk, when you do look at it, when you step back and look back, maybe it is something we should have expected, because he does check a lot of boxes. He's a left winger. The Flyers do not have the depth.
He's a shoot-first player.
He's a shoot-first guy. The Flyers don't really have that.
He's a good second-line winger to put with Patrick and Voracek.
That's
if you
right
want to do that. That's a good, solid first two lines.
It seems to be the consensus that the top six looks like Sean Couturier centering, Claude Giroux on his left, and Konechny on his right, and then Patrick with Van Riemsdyk on his left, and Jake Voracek on his right.
And if you keep Simmons, you have Simmons on your third line with, I don't know who's going to be playing center now at third.
Yeah, that's a good segue. Ron Hextall in his his James Van Riemsdyk press conference said that he at least made it seem like the Flyers might be done in terms of signing guys. It sounds like a lot of the defensemen, and we did see it with guys like John Moore and Calvin DeHaan getting these longer-term contracts that Ron Hextall has said he wants to stay away from, especially defensively, where he has a lot of prospects that could step in.
Exactly.
So defensively and at the third line center, it looks like they're looking to fulfill that from within. And Ron Hextall, something that surprised me, the first name when asked about those potential replacements at third line center was Jordan Wheel.
Yeah, that one really stuck out to me, because that he never really was playing center at any point really when he came up.
Yeah,
because he was always on a wing.
I believe he's played maybe 1 or 2 games at center with the Flyers. I know they have experimented with him at center. He was a guy who
But he was also a guy last season that fell off. Like, his points production went down, and I guess because of that, Hextall always benched him. He was always the guy he put on the press box.
He did spend some games in the press box, and he's someone who I look at and say, and at least I hope that a lot of that production, that struggling that he had last season, could be attributed to playing with Valtteri Filppula for almost the entire season.
And a hurt Simmons.
And a hurt Wayne Simmons. I mean, that was the line for the majority of the year. Simmons.
But even, it's really just the third line, because if you go back to that fourth line that started last year with Lier, Raffel, and Lawton, I think that's a pretty good fourth line.
Yeah, and it's something that they could replicate next season. I mean, obviously, Scott Lawton is also someone who Ron Hextall was the second one he mentioned that could potentially fill that third
even though
line
at the end of last season they had Laterra take over center over him.
Yeah, I mean, see, this is my problem with that. I love the fact that a lot of these young guys could get an opportunity. A guy like Morgan Frost could even get an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
At least he has a shot. I know Ron Hextall said that essentially that's a long shot, but
it is. But that was a long shot for Konechny. No one expected him to make the team.
But the problem I have with this is these decisions, instead of being decided by Ron Hextall, obviously will have some say in it, but a lot of these decisions will be put on the back of Dave Hextall,
who put Valtteri Filppula on the first line.
He did when Sean Couturier was injured. So, and it blows my mind.
That just kind of went towards like the center depth that we didn't really have, and
it's the sort of thing that just kind of blows my mind that Ron Hextall would trust Dave Hextall to make these decisions in terms of the third line center. Obviously, that's a pretty big role on a team. He would let him make that decision, but he also allowed Dave Hextall to put Valtteri Filppula in positions that he could not succeed in, and did not even attempt to sign him. He said in his press conference that he was not
Brandon
signing
Manning.
him. Yeah, him and Brandon Manning was not signing either of them, and Dave Hextall put them in prime spots in the lineup. They got a lot of ice time, and Ron Hextall obviously did not view them as very important pieces, or else he would have re-signed them. So
Chicago did.
Yeah,
Brandon Manning, 2 years, $4.5 million.
Yeah, back in Chicago. But I just don't understand how he can, in some terms, trust Dave Hextall to make these decisions, but then also not re-sign, or not even. It's not even like these people were priced too high.
No,
he didn't even attempt to sign either Valtteri Filppula or Brandon Manning.
Like the decisive thing coming out of his post-game press conference was, okay, we're not re-signing Mrazek, we're not re-signing Manning, and it was iffy on if like Filppula. Nothing else happens in a free agent, Filppula might come back.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I'm kind of.
But he is sticking to what he said when he said if there was young guys that he felt were ready, he was going to put them in the lineup. Which if that's what he said yesterday was how he's feeling, then it looks like that's going to be the way he's going to go.
Yeah, and this is a situation where he is leaving it open. These players, these young players, even a guy like Mikhail Vorobiev, even maybe Vecchione, Morgan Frost, they could work their way onto the lineup. Yeah. They do have a spot that they could potentially fight for.
Or Roop stuff, but he's probably a longer shot.
I think
still. Because he's at least going to be on the Phantoms next year. So.
And then you go defensively, obviously, with a lot of those guys.
But then that also makes the question of who's the 7th defenseman?
And
if it was what was at the end of last year, Hextall put Sanheim and Haig at the.
And this brings up another concern I have, because Ron Hextall did say in his press conference that the Flyers very likely could add a depth defenseman, or potentially could give a tryout to a defenseman. Obviously, in a depth defenseman, he means someone who could fulfill that
7th spot, which was supposed to be Brandon Manning, but Hextall was playing him more.
That's my fear, that Dave Hextall, once again, he could see, them signing a defenseman like a Dan Hanius or someone, a lower level defenseman. Ron Hextall could bring in thinking, okay, this guy will be a 7th guy, or a Johnny Oduya, this guy could be our 7th guy. And then Dave Hextall plays him 60 games of the year because he's Dave Hextall, and he's not the smartest guy in the world.
He saw something in Manning that, for some reason, made him go, okay, he's playing majority of the games.
And the Chicago Blackhawks also
exactly.
saw. And, Joel Quenneville's considered one of the best coaches in the league, so Dave Hextall must be a genius.
Exactly. Putting him with Rocco Gudis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, so, it's...
it's not terrible to do that, because you'll at least have, you still have a good, solid first pair with Ghost and Provorov, but then how everything else plays out, because now you don't have Manning, and now that leaves another spot open.
Yeah, so
do you go back to the Gudis Sanheim, or do you go?
Yeah, we talked about the top 6. Let's go into the defensive pairs. I think I at least hope that we will continue to see a Provorov Gostisbehere pair, although even in the playoffs that was separated. Yeah. So we don't exactly know that, but hopefully they'll continue with those guys.
But even if McDonald wasn't terrible last year, but that could also be because Manning wasn't as good, so he kind of fell back. So
it's one of those things where, I think McDonald was definitely better last season, but I still do not want to see him with any of the top guys like a Provorov or a Gostisbehere.
No.
In terms of a second pair,
I would really like to see Sanheim as a second pair defenseman, but
I would like to see Sanheim Gudis, but it's something that the Flyers didn't really try out last season. And then you have guys like McDonald and
Gudis
and Haig, and McDonald and Haig is a pair.
I don't know.
It was a thing for a little bit.
It was a little bit, but I don't know.
So, am I forgetting someone? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody defensively. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was the...
I would say Morin, but he's...
Yeah, Sam Morin.
He's going to be out until February.
And then there it is. There's Philippe Myers is another guy who...
They were going to give a longer look in preseason.
Yeah, Ron Hextall mentioned again in his press conference after the JVR signing that he is someone who will have a shot. He will have a shot to potentially make the team. He said in the same breath that he will be fighting with, he said Travis Sanheim among the guys fighting. So
yeah, I don't know.
Travis Sanheim maybe not guaranteed a spot on the team. I think he will make the
team.
Team. He should definitely make the team, but I don't know the thinking that goes on there. So yeah, I think Myers definitely.
I think the person you're listening was Oduya, but Oduya's been on. Yeah, I don't think they're re-signing him. So.
Yeah, so Philippe Myers, I think he I think he definitely has a shot.
Obviously, if there's an injury, he could be for a long period of time. He's going to come up, but
I think Philippe Myers is a guy who definitely at some point next season will be on the team.
Yeah, kind of like Sanheim last year, where he came up in like December or January.
Exactly. So I think he'll probably spend some time with the Flyers next season, just like Sam Morin would have spent a lot of time with the Flyers last season.
But he kept
because of injuries.
He was hurt,
But he was also injured. So I think Philippe Myers will spend some time with the Flyers next season. He'll probably play like 30 games. I think he's someone who, just like Travis Sanheim, like you said, will go back and forth.
Yeah.
I think he...
Because the two of them together were really good in the Phantoms. For when Sanheim went down again, when they were put together, it was a good shutdown pair. But then once Sanheim, because you would think because Myers was with Sanheim, that might have been why he was doing so well. But when Sanheim went back up, he was still doing really well. Yeah,
Philippe Myers had a great end to last season, and I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that, maybe he did get into a groove with Sanheim, and then when Sanheim left, he stayed in that groove. But also, he had a more extended period of time without injury. I think we saw the same thing with Nolan Patrick last season, where if you're constantly in this state of rehabbing from an injury, you're not necessarily focusing on your conditioning or stuff like that that's going to help you in a game.
Whereas
but once you're fully healthy, you can focus on those things, and that really helps.
And they're both healthy coming into this offseason, so...
Exactly. It's a big offseason for both of them because they're both healthy. Obviously, Moran, it's a shame he's not healthy.
And Myers is in development camp now, so...
Yeah, Philippe Myers is in development camp. Supposedly, he's eating people out there.
Yeah.
He's making a lot of big hits. He's someone who obviously very much stands out. That reminds me, development camp. It ends tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're gonna do another one of these. We'll talk about that more. But the draft, the first round at least, we can touch on
the first round happened what?
That was
2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, it was the 22nd of June.
Yeah.
Jay O'Brien with the 18th pick, and then with the 14th pick they got, with the 19th pick, and then with the 14th pick they got Joel Farabee.
Yep.
So 2 Americans. There was a very American-oriented draft.
Was.
American and Swedish were the only 2 nationalities.
That's it.
Only ones. And there are 2 picks who...
I even did an article earlier
Okay,
talking about Jay O'Brien, because people would say like it's a safe pick or reach pick or whatever to get O'Brien, but I don't... I mean, you could say the same thing with Morgan Frost, or even Myers wasn't even drafted, and look what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, Jay O'Brien is someone who
he's on the shorter side of 5'10", but for a center, but
he's someone who when I was doing my research, he is someone who I had ranked in my top 31. I think I had him at like 28.
He even said he was all the way in like the 20s or something for you.
Yeah, and he's someone who, as a high school guy, he played in a prep school this year. He will be going to Providence University, or Providence College, next season. He's someone who did not get the looks that a lot of other people did. He didn't get the looks that a guy in the Canadian
But that's kind of the thing with most Americans, because they're either in college or like the American version of the juniors, but those USHL, but those aren't like as highly thought of as like the juniors or the Swedish Elite League or KHL.
Yeah, when you look at guys in the CHL, there are a lot of them that are drafted in the top few rounds, and when you're drafting a guy in the CHL in like the 3rd or 4th round, generally you're getting someone who is tops out as like an AHL guy because they are the like 6th best player on their CHL team. And a lot of teams just kind of stay in that they mainly focus on Canadian drafting and scouting. And they miss out on guys like the Flyers are taking in this draft. They're taking a lot of Americans and Swedes, and those are guys who can be under scouted. And
that was always the drafts before, where Hextall scouts are finding people in Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything.
The Flyers are obviously very trusting in their Swedish scouting. They're a team who drafts
even a Belarusian.
Yeah, a Belarusian guy. Yeah. So, in terms of this draft, Joel Farabee was a guy who. He was my top guy on the board left. I was a really big fan of Vitaly Kravtsov. I thought maybe he could fall to the Flyers, but obviously the Rangers jumped up and got him at 9.
They did.
That was very surprising.
That's the one thing the Islanders did do. They had a pretty good first round.
They did.
The back-to-back picks.
I will say that. They had 2 of my favorite guys in Oliver Wahlstrom and Noah Dobson were 2 guys who I thought the Flyers could potentially maybe trade up and grab.
Yeah.
For them to get them at those two spots without even moving up, that is a big deal for the Islanders. So they did do well.
Because they both kind of fell, both of them.
Yeah, and it was very surprising. So yeah, Farabee is a guy who, he's a left winger. He's a good shot. He's someone who is good at everything, doesn't really have that standout quality, and that's someone who I generally don't rate as highly just because there's no real standout quality, something that I think he'll be able to rely on to make the NHL. Not that I don't think he's going to make the NHL, obviously.
Yeah, he's going to make it, but at some point, but not this upcoming year.
Yeah, he'll take eventually. A few years. I think he's someone who could be a middle six forward. I think that's probably more of his ceiling. I don't necessarily see him as a top line guy, but
no,
that's still valuable. A middle six guy. I think he has a.
At this point, that's kind of what the Flyers are looking for is middle six guy. You kind of already have your top guys. You already know who you kind of want. So right now, it's just a matter of finding your middle guys. Yeah,
honestly, I see Jay O'Brien, their second first-round pick. I see him as maybe having a higher ceiling than a Joel Farabee. He's someone who was under-scouted, as I said before. He's got a high-end level of skill. It's just the main thing was the quality of competition wasn't there because, again, he was playing in prep school. So it's a high-risk pick.
It is,
just because
but in the past few years, I've trusted Hextall's scouts and everything. So
late first-round picks have worked out very well for the Flyers with, again, like Morgan Frost, like you said
Travis
earlier.
Travis
Konechny. So, I think that Farabee is a guy who has a very high ceiling. Sorry,
O'Brien.
Very high floor for Joel Farabee. I think he will be a middle six forward. At worst, I think he'll be a third liner. At best, he'll be a second liner. And obviously, it's a very high value piece to add.
Exactly. It could be with Rupstov, a third line center.
Yeah, there were a couple guys who I thought had higher ceilings and guys who maybe I would have been more excited to grab. But Farabee is a solid guy.
And a guy you definitely didn't want him to take, and they didn't take him. That everyone wanted him to take.
I wasn't a big Keandre Miller guy.
Yeah.
But, and for O'Brien, I think, his floor is pretty low. He's a guy who, maybe won't even make the NHL if things don't break right, because obviously we haven't even seen him play at the U18s. He was too old this season to even play in the U18s. So the quality of competition he's had, he played a little bit with the U.S. national development team.
Right.
And by all accounts, he played well. He only had 2 points in 7 games, but a lot of that was attributed to the fact that the team didn't really see any reason to play him because they knew he was going to college, so there was no reason to further develop him because they knew he was leaving.
Exactly.
So he didn't get much play time. So I that's a big reason why he didn't produce as much. But I think both of them are guys who could be real impact players for the Flyers. It was a draft that didn't necessarily excite me as much as the past few.
Have you had her? And then there's their second round pick of Adam Ginning.
Yeah, Adam Ginning, I was a little bit disappointed in the pick just because he's someone that many have compared to Robert Haig.
Yeah, he doesn't really do.
He's a defensive defenseman who's an okay skater. He's good in the defensive zone, but there's concerns about his ability to push the puck up the ice.
Yeah.
So in the defensive zone, he might be good, but if the puck's always in the defensive zone, that's even no matter how good you are in the defensive zone, it's not a good thing to always have the puck in your own end.
Unless they're thinking of him as like a penalty killer kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely value in that, but to me, I'm not using a second round pick on a guy who tops out as a bottom.
But like he just said, it wasn't the most exciting of drafts this class, but
yeah, I mean, the Flyers are at a point now where I would have liked for them to have drafted more of the higher ceiling guys just because they have such great depth prospect wise that they don't necessarily need to go after the guys who have that, second pair or third line ceiling type.
Yeah.
I would have liked for them to have taken the guys who, maybe don't necessarily, they aren't guarantees to make the NHL, but they have the skill level to potentially be a great player. Like I think that's something where, even if there's like a 60% chance that player doesn't even make the NHL, if you have that like 20% or 10% chance that they could be a star, I'd rather make that pick in a middle round than a guy who is like going to make the league, but is just...
It's like Frost. Nobody would want to take a chance on him because he was so small and he had to develop so much for a center. And then Hextall took a chance on him, and look what he's doing so far in juniors.
He's been great. So
he's put on weight, but even Hextall said yesterday he feels like he needs to gain more.
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't dislike the draft necessarily. It was just very meh for me. I had questions about Ron Hextall's thought process in terms of whether or not he was thinking that this team was ready to win now, and if he was really going to if he was the right guy to make the moves for them to win now.
Yeah.
And with the addition of James Van Riemsdyk, that's quieted a lot of critics, and including me, and I think it was a great signing in terms of need for the Flyers, and I really...
You don't have to... And I guess now you could put Lindblom on the third line.
It moves everyone down a spot. So
it's not the worst thing
line.
with
Raffl's probably on the fourth.
Yeah, probably.
And that really helps with depth because it pushes those guys down a line that shouldn't have necessarily been on a line ahead. Right. And now they're really in their spot.
Who knows? Hextall did have Raffle on the first line for a little bit over Konechny.
That is true in the playoffs. And Michael Raffle, I mean, I don't even know if he was mentioned by Ron Hextall, but I would say that I would add that Michael Raffle, at least nationally for Austria, has played center.
Yeah, he has.
So if the Flyers really are looking for a guy in a pinch to play center, Michael Raffle is an option.
Yeah.
And as a guy who's known as a good two-way guy, I think that he could be a decent option. So we want to wrap up here?
Yeah, we can wrap up.
I think you can catch us again tomorrow.
Tomorrow we're going to do another one of these.
We're going to start doing daily podcasts.
Yeah, we're going to try doing more of these. We haven't really come up with a name yet, but we'll get there.
We're going to start a website. We're going to start writing for it.
Yeah, we're going to do all these things.
High gear on this thing.
So until then, yep.